Has it ever struck you as strange how we recommend video games to people? How many times have you said something like, oh, if you like the old Zelda, you'd like Tunic or Death's Door. Man, if you like Final Fantasy X and Persona, you should try Expedition 33. If you like the old Silent Hill games, you should try Signalis or Crow Country. We typically use interest in one title as a trampoline to suggesting other ones, and this is kind of how our minds work. We compare things to understand. Psychologists call this a schema, which is just a mental framework to help us comprehend something quicker. If you had never seen a platypus before and I was trying to describe it to you, instead of going feature by feature, I'd save us both a ton of time if I simply said, imagine a beaver had a one-night stand with a duck. The same is true of games. It's easier to ask, did you like Hades, instead of, do you fancy procedural level generation, permanent death, ability synergies, and characters so attractive they'd make Hugh Hefner blush? This is a rogue-like. These aren't action role-playing games, they're Souls-likes. Silksong isn't a platforming exploration game, it's a Metroidvania. Our entire lexicon as gamers is built around something being like something, and that's fine. We have done it, we will continue to do it, it is how our minds work. But the more I age and the more I play, I have really found myself drawn to games that you cannot do this for. Games that are unlike anything else I've played. And this is not to say that I don't enjoy a good jaunt through Night City or a cozy round of falling in a vat of blood in Resident Evil.
I got in my mouth.
But today, I want to celebrate a few games that really don't feel like they belong to a particular genre. Games that, while you could technically say it's similar to one aspect of something else you've played, it's so incredibly unique in its presentation, mechanics, and narrative that you'd struggle to include it in the, if you like that, play this sentence structure. We're going to take a look at games that do that for me today. So if you'll quickly indulge me, grab a snack, and while I knock out the sponsor read, get cozy, and then we will talk about games that are beyond comparison. And speaking of games, what if I told you that you could learn coding through a game? Boot.Dev is not, strictly speaking, a video game, but it does use modern game design to teach you how to code. Instead of slamming you with a textbook and a wall of information, Boot introduces coding concepts by letting you get your hands dirty. If this is the first time you've coded in years, or even if you're completely new, you can get started at any skill level. Over the course of your lessons, you'll earn XP, levels, achievements, complete quests, fight bosses. All of these things are in place to make the grind of coding both approachable and engaging. Boredom is the enemy, being overwhelmed is the enemy. Boot wants to keep you right in that sweet spot between the two, which, by the way, is what makes some of your favorite games so addicting. Imagine that same sensation, but you're cultivating a marketable skill. The back-end development career field is massive, pays very well, and may even end up with you working from home. But hey, that's thinking big. Maybe you want to start small. You can view all of their content for free in guest mode, and there is a free demo if you want to actually give it a try. The nice thing is, if you ever get stuck on a lesson, there is both a Boot Discord community and a little guy named Boots who will not simply give answers, but instead nudges you in the right direction so that you can have a proper aha moment and actually learn the concept instead of just copying the answer. That's how detail-oriented these folks are. So, if you'd like 25% off your entire first year, go to Boot.Dev and use my code DarylTalksGames at checkout. Link in the description, QR code on screen. A massive thanks to Boot.Dev for the sponsor. Now, let's get back to the show. The game Critters for Sale did something to me that no other game has really done. It reminded me of a fear I haven't had since I was maybe 12 or 13 years old. Maybe it's a fear that you once had too. Do you remember discovering the internet when you were younger and then falling down the conspiracy theory rabbit hole? Celebrities faking their deaths, reptilian overlords secretly in government office, the Illuminati and aliens and the Antichrist, the internet, a sudden digital regurgitation of things that one might find in the book of Revelations. As a child sitting at home while my single mom was working late, these things shook me to the bone. With no real-world experience under my belt and very little of my skepticism skill tree filled out, the first time I consumed these theories, they consumed me and invaded the cracks of my subconscious. I wandered between classes at school thinking about them, wondering if there was any validity to them. Now, as an adult, obviously there isn't, and most of us are so tired and jaded that we almost wish they were true. Ergo, they don't really hold the same effect on us as they once did. And so, over the years, that tiny phase of my life kind of dissolved from my memory. But Critters for Sale liquidizes that adolescent fear, bottles it up, and re-injects it into my amygdala. The game opens with a choice that really doesn't compute when you first open it. If you click start, you'll be given a choice between snake, goat, monkey, spider, and dragon. I went with snake, and your phone's ringtone disrupts a good night's sleep. You take out your phone to check the message you've just received. A text message from Michael Jackson. Huh. Must be Chris and his lame attempts at humor. Should you decide to get out of bed and make your way to the Limelight Club and actually search out your friend Chris, you will be met with Michael Jackson. He goes on to tell you that you and him will share an intimate friendship in a future that you haven't lived yet. You and him are time travelers. You changed lives and even civilizations. And, don't worry, this will all make sense when you meet the Noid Men. And after a rousing performance, the Noid Men do show up, pistol in hand. Michael turns to you and says, "I'll see you again, 12 years from now, your second daughter's birthday." Then the Noid Men blow Michael's brains out.
Would you believe me if I told you that this is one of the more normal moments of the game?
Critters for Sale is a point-and-click adventure with multiple endings for each critter that you can unlock, but that's where the definitions end because there is so much here that simply does not remind me of anything else I've played. It's the only game I've encountered with this unapologetically feverish presentation. Faces don't move, they morph. Expressions unnaturally smear into one another. Everyone you meet looks like something wearing a person's skin, trying desperately to pass as real. I mean, just look at how this guy smiles. Like, back up, man. Why are you so close to me? And it's not just in how the game looks, it's the choices it makes in its story that perfectly captures this early internet conspiracy dread. In one route, you're in New York in 1997. It opens on this shot before the towers fell, drumming of all those old 9/11 theories from back in the day. In one route, you become immortal, join the Noid Men, and then meet Elon Musk and George Lucas. In another, you witness something that I won't spoil, but it leads to Satan being resurrected. The game uses hyper-famous celebrities and historical events and religion that are all likely embedded into many of our upbringings to make the narrative feel invasive, as if each insane story is dancing around some greater truth about the universe that we are tiny and helpless to combat, just like the old conspiracy theories used to make us feel when we were younger. It's one of the only games about the occult I've ever come across in the wild, and even when I try to hunt down titles that do use these themes, the list is slim pickings. There are certainly games that deal in the supernatural and the paranoid, but I don't think I've ever played anything quite like Critters for Sale simply because there are no vibes to compare it with. Maybe Dawn to Dawn, that's probably the closest I can imagine, but only Critters in my experience has captured the lonely early YouTube discovery of I feel fantastic upon meeting some of the characters in this game. I really want to tell you more specifically about my favorite character and my favorite ending, but this is a game that if it interests you, for goodness sake, give it a go, and do so without me spoiling anything else here. Critters for Sale is a dark, swirling vortex of paranoia that preys on some latent fears that you may not even know you have. So, given the fact that this video is about things not being related to other things, my metaphors are offline and my transitions in this video are going to be a bit cross-threaded. But if I had to give one similarity between this game and the next, it's that both have multiple perspectives to pick from, which is what makes this next one so remarkable. The opening of 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim is a lot. It's probably the biggest hurdle to getting into the game if you've ever given it a try. The narrative opens on Ashitaba City in a state of emergency. Something large has just appeared. People run to escape. Papers and dust flutter in the breeze. I wonder what the object is. Sensing the imminent danger, a girl summons a giant robot. We're brought into a tutorial. The girl, Iori, seems to have no clue what she has just done or how to pilot this thing. Hang on, how did she know how to summon it but doesn't know how to pilot it? A boy appears over the intercom and says, "Why are you in Sekigahara's Sentinel?" Wait, who is Sekigahara? After a short combat tutorial, a kaiju appears behind Iori. But in the nick of time, Juro Kurabe shows up in another Sentinel. He says,
I can't let this turn out like Sector 3.
What happened in Sector 3? The other boy calls him Izumi and wonders if Izumi's memory has returned. Wait, I thought his name was Juro. Is it not Juro?
My name is Juro Kurabe.
Why can't they agree on his name? All of these questions have answers, believe it or not, but the way that 13 Sentinels reveals them is what sets this game apart. Now, fiction uses multiple perspectives for many reasons, right? In The Last of Us 2, we see Ellie's perspective first, but then it's the contrast with Abby's that builds empathy and humanizes our enemies. The movie Gone Girl reveals a totally different perspective in the second act to relay new pieces of information. Detroit Become Human does the same. Nier Replicant, Nier Automata. I'm sure you're muttering an example to yourself right now. The difference is, this game uses 13 perspectives. And it doesn't just allow you to shotgun one character story at a time. It strategically bars further progress in each one until you've hit necessary story beats. I can't even imagine the narrative scaffolding involved in writing this game and revealing information in just the right way, but somehow it does it. And what makes it even more impressive is what these 13 perspectives must cover. Let me explain. The movie Vantage Point follows an attempted assassination through 8 different viewpoints. Through each one, we learn a little bit more, and each fact propels the narrative and our understanding forward. It's a fun watch, but it is simply following a 23-minute event. We recap the same experience 8 times with new information and recontextualization each round. But early on in 13 Sentinels, it becomes clear if you pay attention to the dates that this narrative takes place over generations. You don't just get different angles to one event, you get multiple narrators to a sprawling timeline. And when you do that math, timeline times character viewpoints, you get an intro that can only be as complicated as this one. And I don't want to spoil what happens, but what I can tell you is that what makes it flow is questions and assumptions. As soon as you get attached to one character because of your time in their story, their actions in another person's story poke holes in their reliability as a narrator. You start to build a sandcastle out of your questions, only for a new revelation to wash over it like the tide and make you start building another one with new information. It is infinitely satisfying seeing it all come together in the end, and because of the freedom between which story you consume next, it's almost impossible for you to have the exact same experience as someone else. There is a grand scale to this narrative that I think can only be achieved by how much this game latches onto your brain when you aren't playing it because of all the unanswered questions and contradictions. And while I can certainly understand this game not being for everyone, it is vanillaware, so weirdly placed fan service and sometimes insipid dialogue will occasionally tarnish the fun, but the music, combat, characters, and ultimately structure culminate in a ride that is genuinely like no other. Can you recall a time in your life that, when you look back on it now, feels as though it passed in the blink of an eye? You know what you were doing then. Maybe the memories are sweet, maybe they make your stomach turn, but notably, it just feels like that period of your life slipped out from under you without you really noticing. Before Your Eyes is a game that uses that very sensation as its strongest storytelling tool. Now, full disclosure, technically I have talked about this game before. If you want to skip this because you watched this 3 years ago, or have heard about it already because it's stupidly successful, that's totally fair. But given the topic, it would be criminal not to talk about Before Your Eyes here because, maybe more than anything else in this video, I promise you that it is unlike anything else you've played. The narrative begins with you in the afterlife. Your soul has been picked up by this fox, dog, man, he's a cool dude. And he's informed you that before you meet your maker over in that tower, he wants to fully understand your life so that he can vouch for you. And so, you show him, beginning with your very first memories. You discover through them that this soul's name is Benny, and you experience his life in a series of tender, colorful sequences. His mother taking him to the beach to watch his first sunset, his father filming his first birthday party, photo albums read to him before bed, meeting his first pet, doing his first math assignment, playing with his first friend. Before Your Eyes paints these delicate little portraits of moments that You know, maybe you have had yourself. The game taps into a very tender part of your soul that you don't often show to others, and it breaks down your defenses as you lose yourself in these warm moments. You're here, you're present in these places, and you don't want to leave. So you're careful not to, because if you do, it passes in the blink of an eye, both figuratively and literally. This game is not a visual novel or a point-and-click story. No, those allow you to control your pace through them. Before your eyes is controlled via webcam. It watches you as you play and tracks your blinking. Closing your eyes is how you move the story along, not clicking or hitting a button. When this metronome appears on screen, it means that the next time the game detects a blink, the story will jump forward in time, sometimes seconds, sometimes years. And because blinking is something that we typically do without conscious effort, and gets harder not to do the more you try not to do it, you will early and often unintentionally rip yourself away from the comfort of these scenes before the dialogue is finished or before you are finished. Most video games will allow you to stay in a place as long as you like. Artificial days may pass, but your character does not age. Time doesn't really go by. But much like time in reality, time and before your eyes does not care if you are ready. No matter how much you wish you could stay in someone's embrace, in someone's company, in your favorite place, that moment will always pass before you'd like it to. And that's poetic as hell. I think we can all agree that this is a great mechanic because of how well it illustrates the fragility of time. But what I love about this game is how it sometimes will completely flip that on you. There are memories here that are mundane, just like there are days of our life that are mundane. Maybe you're ready to move on, so you blink. Maybe you're ready to pass on this day, so you scroll. But once the game has you used to that, you will sometimes arrive in a memory that is uncomfortable. In this one, for instance, Benny is asked to speak at the funeral of a loved one, and he just stands there, speechless, unable to process this loss. It is wildly distressing, and notably, there is no metronome. Blinking does nothing. There is no escape from this moment. And I think we can all relate to that silent panic of being trapped between ticks of the clock, wanting nothing more than to move on already. The blinking mechanic is a beautiful way to remind us all how fast or slow time can move depending on what we are currently going through. In tragedy and pain, like a curse, somehow it slows. In triumph and peace, like magic, it slips away unnoticed. Did you ever watch the movie Wanted from like 2008? It's the one with Angelina Jolie and James McAvoy and Morgan Freeman is like,
"Let your instincts guide you."
And then he slings a pistol and the bullet curves to hit the target. I remember nothing about this movie except for the curving bullet thing and how even as a kid I was like, that's not how physics works. But if you can get over the absurdity of two bullets swerving around an innocent bystander and colliding in the air, you, like many others over the years, have almost certainly found yourself doing that dumbass pistol whipping motion around the house and imagining the bullet slinging around a corner into a building and landing perfectly in its destination. If you want a game that simulates that feeling of downing a whole room of assassins in a single round, my friend, you need to know about Children of the Sun. You play as the girl who is currently on a revenge tour against the cult that ruined her life, and with her blinding rage, you will have the power to literally bend your bullet between targets in increasingly complex places. The reason that this game is kind of unlike any other I've seen is simply because I've never played a shooter that feels like a puzzle game. Well, I guess except Portal, but hang on, we should have a Portal section, shouldn't we? Portal is a game. Here's how to bend your bullet. When you hit a target, time slows, and then you get to reorient the bullet's trajectory. When you let it fly, if you hit another target, you reorient again, and this continues until you miss, creating this symphony of carnage. And that sounds like a power trip, but oh yeah, I forgot to mention, you only get one bullet. meaning half of the strategy takes place before you fire. Much of your time in this game is spent circling warehouses and campgrounds, ensuring that you have everyone accounted for, because if you don't get everyone in one shot, it's game over, try again. And what I find fascinating about how this game plays is that it's one of those rare instances in gaming where you don't have a preset experience from another game of the same genre to draw upon. Like Portal, goddammit, you learn this game at the same pace as anyone else would. You have to learn the hard way that once you're inside a building, if you forget someone, getting back out of the building isn't easy. You have to order your targets such that your bullet has space to build more momentum to pierce certain armor. When the difficulty begins to rise, you start noticing things like explosive barrels, gas pumps, wildlife. A bird is still an optional target, which can reorient you if you need to bail out of the map and reevaluate your path mid-shot, which actually I think is a nice echo of the narrative. Your sudden willingness to kill any and everything to complete the level has a venomous harmony with the girl's blind rage at the cult, which, by the way, that is felt in every aspect of the game's aesthetic. Violent violets and scarred scarlets are contrasted with yellows. I can't think of a good word to close out the alliteration. Blood erupts from targets when they're hit. When it rains, the screen still somehow feels like it's searing itself into your retinas. Even the fish are on fire. And you certainly feel this in the soundtrack as well. Just listen to how it sounds to finish a level and eradicate all life from an area. The style is off the charts, and again, it all serves the purpose of reminding you how horrific your cold-blooded acts here are. The game never lets you feel comfortable with what you've done. The soundtrack grates into your eardrums upon victory. My favorite level is probably Main Street, this overcooked fever dream of a town that serves as one of the best playgrounds in the game. It's a tough level, but unraveling it by finding all of the correct ins and outs through windows and between buildings and into gas tanks is stupidly fun. All around, Children of the Sun is a game that doesn't really have a proper comparison if you look in the related recommended games on Steam, because it is, frankly, one of a kind. Bane in The Dark Knight Rises is one of the most quotable silver screen comic book villains in the last 20 years. You merely adopted the dark. Do you feel in charge? Once Gotham is ashes, then you have my permission to die. We love these. We love doing the voice. We love doing it better than I do it. But there was one line in that film that snuck past me when I watched it in theaters all those years ago. And it is an absolute bar.
Patience costs you strength. Victory has defeated you.
And that's not one that people typically quoted or memed about back in 2012. It certainly wasn't the one that struck me the most 14 years ago, but it is a line that somehow stings at this stage of my life. And it's a line that I think beautifully sums up a game called The Dark Queen of Mortholme. You play as the titular queen whose quaint eternal reign is one day interrupted by a hero. So, as the Dark Queen, you get up from your throne to combat him and, okay, cool, you got him. Easy. Game over. You can go back to your throne and continue reigning now. There's nothing else to... He's back. If you've played a reasonable amount of games in your life, you'll probably recognize this setup. Your massive health bar and absurdly powerful moves, his tiny chicken peck offense barely harming you. You are the final boss in a very difficult game. Of course, this is likely not the first time you've been evil with a controller in your hand. Lots of games offer a morally questionable route, but as far as I can tell, this is the only game that is completely built around you playing as the final boss instead of, the main character. But what this setup does is allow you to experience the sensation of overcoming a challenge in reverse, which is to say, slowly losing control. Typically, when you fight a boss like this, every loss feeds you with new information. Tiny improvements fuel your desire to continue. Subtle realizations about when you could safely attack microdose your soul with hope. And in the dialogue, the hero makes clear that these are the things that matter most to him. Rarely does he mention her throne or her reign of terror. Instead, most of their interactions are philosophical. He finds himself excited at the prospect of improving and changing, whereas she sees this pursuit as pathetic and a waste of time. The Queen states at one point that people don't change as much as you think. Everyone has their limits, and that this should scare him. Perhaps it would be a mercy if he left. But the hero disagrees. He doesn't want to be relieved of the burden of trying. In their interactions, both physical and verbal, the hero slowly reminds the Queen what it is like to struggle, to do something she hasn't done in living memory. To change. And you feel this in the later fights. It hits you that he is improving and you aren't. You have the same 3 moves, the same limitations, but he is growing. New items, new skills, new strategies. You can't learn or adapt to the hero because the Queen is eternal, unchanging. Yet his attempts grow more and more successful as it becomes impossible to ignore that you are doomed. Eventually, the hero asks her what she fears. Your options for a response are losing who I am and being left behind. And for some reason, when I played this, I picked the first. She responded and then elaborated that a queen dethroned is a queen no longer, but a queen is all I have ever been. Victory has defeated her. During her reign, somewhere along the way, she has lost what put her on the throne to begin with. And this spoke to me on a very personal level because, and hear me out on this, that is what it sometimes feels like making videos for you guys. For those that don't know, I've been doing this for almost 9 years at this point, and thanks to you all, I have been more successful than I could have ever imagined. I can pay my bills now, I can care for my family now, I can upload a video and watch it hit 500,000 views, and it feel like any normal Tuesday. But sometimes that thought bubble that reads, "I've made it," poisons my soul. Feeling comfortable in a way limits my moveset as it does the Queen's. For years, I worked just like the hero. Every small improvement to my editing or my writing made me work furiously. The quest for what I have now is what drove me for years, but now that I'm here, sometimes I'll sit down to make a video and just nothing. I'll finish a script I don't really like, upload it, watch it bomb, and then all I hear is that line. Peace has cost you your strength. Victory has defeated you. What if I can't keep it up? Who am I now if not some big hotshot YouTuber? And then I think about the Dark Queen of Mortholme. Her biggest fear as I chose it, losing who I am. And maybe you can relate to this as well. Perhaps you were once passionate about something and it just left you once you found success. Maybe becoming as good as you wanted at something extinguished any desire to push even further. Maybe in your pursuit to become beyond comparison, you feel nothing but disgust at how average your work feels when you compare it to the work of others. Maybe it feels like everyone else is improving and experiencing the world, but you can't escape the throne room. Something really interesting begins to happen as the game progresses. Early on, the Queen simply burns the hero's corpse off the floor with a snap of the fingers and a magical flame, but after the hero persists, she begins to kneel down to do so, and eventually, after many more encounters, she hugs his corpse as it fades to ashes. Despite what she says, the hero is awakening something in her that she may not even fully understand. And I think it's the comfort of failure, the thrill of struggling. There's an old saying that once you hit rock bottom, the only way to go is up, and I believe that to be true, but to me, this game is a fable of what happens once you hit your ceiling. The only way to go is down, and perhaps down is exactly what you need to reach new heights, to remember the joy of the chase. I know this is really silly, but there's a dumb fortune cookie scrap that I've kept taped to my monitor for years, but I never take it down because it's what I read in moments of frustration to keep me grounded. The virtue lies in the struggle, not in the prize. It was never about the throne, it was about the climb. It is genuinely not just about making something that is beyond comparison, it's about chasing a feeling that is. Hey everyone, thanks so much for allowing me a shorter and more contained topic on this one. They can't all be lengthy, existential, and cosmically horrifying. Sometimes I just want to gush about stuff that I like, and I hope that's okay. As always, it is a pleasure to see your thoughts down below. Let me know what games you find are beyond comparison and that I didn't talk about and should have. Like the video, share it, hit that lovely subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this. Oh, and catch me on Thursdays on Twitch, I do stream. And if you just can't get enough of the show and want to help make it possible, support me over on Patreon. For $1 a month, you can get access to editing streams, weekly updates, bloopers, behind the scenes, creative input, and your name in the credits like you see here. A big ol' thank you to this month's featured patrons. Spooky Hat, Ryan Langston, Thomas the Dank, 100 miles per hour, The Devil 27, Ryan Magison, Sauxy, thank you, and Bree. Thanks again, take care, and have yourself a damn good one.
I'm literally making sound effects right now. What the fuck is going on?